Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Faces in FinOps podcast powered by ProsperOps. I'm your host, Jon Myer. Now, the Faces in FinOps podcast is about highlighting thought leaders in the cloud financial management space and insights on how they're making an impact not only within their organization, but the broader FinOps community. Today's guest is Austin Cheng, a senior FinOps analyst at a major ERP company that he's been at for the last 3 years. He mainly focuses on reporting, tooling, analytics, and managing commitment-based discounts. Please join me in welcoming Austin to the show. Austin, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Austin, before we jump into things, how about you give our audience a little bit of a backstory about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I've been in FinOps for practicing FinOps for about the last 3 years. Um, and honestly, I kind of fell into it. I've been at my company for about almost 9 years, 8 years now. And through a series of reorgs and a little bit of shuffling and joining a new team, I was I kind of fell into the FinOps space, and so beforehand I was really mainly focused on doing customer cost analytics for our private data center side, and so FinOps now has been something that I had to really even just understanding the DevOps world and understanding cloud financial management has been it's been really fun for me. It's been a great journey and still continuing to learn and still, um, yeah, still feel like I'm trying to understand things.
I think the best stories are the ones where you fell into a role, it's kind of gravitated towards you, and that's really where a lot of the passion comes into, and your expertise just gets keeps growing and growing. And it's always an
Hmm.
area that you can continue to learn.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And now being on this side of doing FinOps and public cloud cost management, I mean, private data center cost analytics just does not seem nearly as interesting for me. And just in general, just being able to use the cloud has been something that's so much more dynamic and really interesting for me.
I'm not sure I could go back to a private data center. Racketing, stacking servers versus this public cloud where you can't physically touch an asset, but there's so much more and there's a lot of variables to it. It's actually really exciting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And for me, as from the analytics side, being having very specific level of data to work with is what really excites me, as opposed to, on the private data center side, you're doing all these working a lot with your finance team for, I guess, amortization schedules and all that. Just having a much more cleaner, dynamic way of calculating usage and measuring and reporting and all that. It's just so much more enjoyable.
Austin, can you talk a little bit more about your role at your current company? What are you responsible for? What are you doing there?
Yeah, sure. As a FinOps analyst, I mean, our FinOps team spans all the different areas of FinOps, and I'm specifically working on our cloud cost management tool. So we are using Looker as our cloud cost management tool to what we've kind of homegrown. At this point, we were using a different cloud cost management tool beforehand, and over time we saw that we were outgrowing it, and we really needed something that was more customizable. And so I am building out a lot of our dashboards and reporting and being a subject matter expert to our different technology teams to help them understand their costs, as well as then point them to different cost saving opportunities. So I build out a lot of dashboards that highlight our saving potentials, cost reduction potentials, and then so that's one aspect of it. We also are. I also manage our commitment-based discounts right now, so making sure our company has both or balancing between the utilization as well as the coverage. And right now, yeah, I'm the one who manages it for all of my company's spend, and been pretty proud to say that I've really good ESR, really high ESR, um, and it's just a testament to the teams that we have that I can work with to understand their workloads as well as the tools that we have that allow me to kind of maintain our coverage.
Awesome. Before we dive in a little more about what you're like specifically the dashboards, I have a lot of curious questions on these
Yeah,
dashboards that you created and the data and the importance of it. But I'm going to ask a challenging question. Why FinOps? What does FinOps mean to you?
sure. Yeah, I think that FinOps means just getting the most out of your cloud spend, right? And making sure that we have the guardrails in place so that your your company and your engineering teams can really succeed, right? You know, with the cloud, possibilities are limitless, but we have to also stay within budget, stay within our forecasts, and so and to really use the cloud in a smart way. And so FinOps provides the tools and I think the frame of mind and the frame of thinking to be able to best achieve that.
I like how you said getting the most out of your cloud, right? Out of your cloud
Yeah.
spend. You didn't even tell me that it was cost savings, cost reduction. It's getting the most out of your environment. And then obviously you're saving some money, but making money at the same time.
hmm hmm Yeah. I think when everybody dives into FinOps in the very beginning, I mean, uh, nobody really, or it's always the case where people are, uh, diving into FinOps without really a FinOps background, right? It's always like, oh no, our cloud bill is going up, and we really need to get a handle on it, right? And so I think FinOps always starts off as a cost saving kind of exercise for folks because it's especially at a larger company, it kind of creeps up on you. But then, over time, it really is about the discipline of getting the most out of your cloud and, using it smartly, creating automation that prevents, instances from just running perpetually, using the right instances, using, yeah, using the right resources for the right time.
What happened originally when the cloud kind of started out, everybody was jumping onto it and their cloud bill was creeping up and they're just like, yeah, we got to get there. We're going to get there. And now what they're realizing is that it's a variable and they can't kind of keep the constraints within it anymore. Now they have to make that a priority. Austin, I want to jump over to really about the FinOps in your organization. Were
Mhm.
you the first hire, one of the first hires in it?
I wasn't the first hire, but I was definitely one of the very earliest members of the FinOps team as it is constructed today. So, um, yeah, I was like I had mentioned earlier, I was uh, kind of shuffled around into it and fell into it, and so yeah, it's been a really great journey to be able to see how my company is continually growing in the cloud. And um, and so despite that, we've been able to, have develop a culture and an awareness around cloud spend in a way that, our, I guess, year over year um, spend um, has been as a percentage decreasing in a way that, we're still growing the cloud, still spending more today than we did yesterday, but at the very least getting a handle on not having, crazy growth.
How would you describe your organization's FinOps maturity, though?
Yeah, so I would say it's somewhere between um, all right now. So yeah, I think right now our FinOps team has more of a, I would say, kind of more of like a finance. angle into how we're operating and really looking to grow in the engineering side of it. And so, yeah, I would say it's at a somewhere in between a crawl and a walk right now, where we have really great, show back tools. We have really great cloud cost awareness, and now it'll have a very good, I think, forecasting process as well, where it is we have some good forecasting kind of automation that allows us to crowdsource and have our engineering teams be responsible and owners of their cloud spend, or at least their cloud spend forecast. And when it comes to really kind of going further, having that having a lot of more automation behind our guardrails, and then also incorporating more data to really have our teams interest or able to see their spend from, say, our Kubernetes workloads, um, and other aspects.
How critical is it to visualize and see all these different workloads and what's happening within your cloud environment?
Yeah, I think it's critical, right? Especially when it comes to really um, uh, selling, FinOps as a discipline, as a practice, as a mindset. It's really great for anybody to be able to see the impact that they have when they make changes, right? So, for example, I was rolling out this dashboard that was, all about EBS volumes, right? How much are you running in GP2 versus GP3? And what do your snapshots look like, right? And I was able to show a team that was pretty mature in running efficient workloads, how their snapshots were growing over time, right? And he's like, "Oh, why is this like this? Here, let me. Thanks for showing me this. Let me get back to you." Right? And then in a few days, he made sure that he had some automation to delete, certain snapshots after a certain amount of time, and he can immediately see that. Right? And so not only having that visualization, but then also tying that visualization to a number, right? People are more inclined and prone to act upon things when they have like a number to work towards, right? So you can show them what is your potential savings, and what is your progress up to this point, and how much can you save further on. And I think when it comes to working with engineers, I find that having both daily and yearly impact is kind of like the most effective, right? Hourly data is sometimes a little too almost too granular, and then I'm just talking about like impact on the mind to take action, right? So hourly is a little too granular almost, but then daily, people can think about their lives in terms of days, most immediately. And so having a daily impact, you can save X amount over this day, and then also a yearly impact, like how much could you save if this action that you took ran for 12 months.
In the example that you just gave about the EBS volumes, it sounded like your engineers trusted you and the data, and I don't want to say bought into the FinOps, but understood the value of it.
Hmm.
Was it always that way, or did you have to build that trust and get them motivated in order to take action?
Yeah, I definitely have to build that trust, right? Because on the one hand, engineers, they they're really focused on the things that they have on their plate at this time, right? And then somebody else comes around, some unknown person kind of comes around and says, "Hey, you could save this and such amount," and it all sounds great, but you know, I have other competing priorities going on right now. I mean, I'm even kind of I feel like recently I had some insight even into that kind of mentality, because we're using Looker, and uh, and because of that, we have BigQuery costs, and our BigQuery costs have been going up, and there are areas to optimize that. But I'm like, oh man, but I have so much like other work to do. It's going to be hard to me for when am I going to even find time to even address these BigQuery costs? And so, and me not being an engineer, I never really had that kind of perspective or insight into these things. But early on in my FinOps journey, like I said, I don't have any DevOps background or engineering background, and so I definitely went into things a little. I went into things, just pointing out engineers or engineering managers, like, why are you using this or why aren't you using that? This could be cheaper if you use X and X amount, right? And I think that really that did not take well in the very beginning because we didn't really have a proper, I think, reporting and dashboarding tool to really represent what I'm saying. But and so a lot of these things kind of just fell on deaf ears. And so having it really boils down to the data, right? Having a common set of data that you can sit around the table together and be able to sit down and walk through. This is what we're seeing. Could you help us understand why you run the workloads as you do today, and then and what are the opportunities? What are the potential? Let's map out the potential that we have to be able to save costs here.
That thing you said right there is understanding why you're doing it right now. I was on the engineering side, and we would have to deploy out a workload, right? You had a licensing, it had to be in a certain size, instance, anything outside of that, and you broke licensing agreement, or that was the specs and requirements because people didn't understand what the cloud was versus on-prem. They're like, give me the best server, the biggest server for it. So you followed all those guidelines. And they're like, yeah, I have to. It says it right here. And people were still understanding and learning the cloud at the same time. But you asked the right questions. Why are you not, hey, run on this one, it's cheaper?
Hmm.
No, I can't. And now you understand. But it really, how did you get them to be motivated to make that change? Because most engineers are like, it's not my money. Why? Like, what is the value? You kind of really have to tell them like all the other things that you can do, all the other investment and money that you can get into it. But how did you get them motivated to make those changes?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it definitely is the case that most engineers have like a lot on their plate, right? And so cost optimization is it can take a back seat for sure. And so um, I think to getting people motivated to really make the changes, it really is about making for me, what I found is making your visualizations and your reporting as straightforward as possible, right? Because then it's easy to something that's easy to digest, and when it's easy to digest, then they're more willing to take action on things. And then there's also the forecasting side of things where now teams have their the finances are in a much sharper focus, especially these days, as opposed to, oh man, I feel like a couple years ago, 2021, people were people were spending money left and right, and they were just building as much as possible. In the last couple of years, uh, people are paying attention more to their costs, and so having budgeting and forecasting in a way which keeps people accountable, and really also being able to bring that to them, right? Not like having their forecasts and their budgets like not just to hang it over their heads, like, hey, this is what you forecasted, this is what you budgeted for the year, but making it a another almost piece of data that we can sit at the table with and bring it to them. Like, these are your costs, but this is also what you have, and let's understand why this is happening. And I think that's also one of the really great things about the cloud cost management tool that we've kind of built internally, in that we also have our budgeting and forecasting integrated with our cloud costs. And so we can, like I said, have a common set of data that we can meet with people over.
Austin, can I talk about like the dashboards and
Yeah,
analytics that you're responsible for and that you
sure.
built? Because one of the things with FinOps, obviously, the tool either build, buy, or a native integration, and you guys have built the tool
Hmm.
around it. And for the reporting capability, what are some of the key reports or dashboards that you've put together for your team?
Yeah. So I think some of the key reports that we have is just being able to give like a high level summary of what kind of spend you have in your account, what's your daily spend, what are the different AWS services that you're spending in. Because I think just having those off, I mean, they're simple dashboards, but it allows people to, I guess, get familiar with the data, start at a high level, and get comfortable with the data that they're looking at. To be honest, I borrow a lot from the cost intelligence dashboards when I was initially building them, but yeah, it's a mixture of showing folks what they have been spending, um, as well as showing them what is potential savings that they could have if they move from, say, like I already brought this up, but GP3 to GP2 to GP3, their EBS volumes, that is, or if these are their snapshots that are X days old, 1 year old, over a year old. This is what you could be saving. One dashboard um, that I've spent a lot of time building out is actually almost reads like a blog. So it's a really neat feature within Looker that you can have all your texts and things like that alongside, and it's very customizable. Where you arrange all your reports. And so I just run down all the different kind of services um, that we could potentially be saving money in, and write an explanation. Uh, this is how much you're spending in this service, and this is how much you could be saving if you move to a newer generation or a newer workload.
How often are these reports viewed or even reviewed within the organization or team?
I would say it's. Do you mean like like other engineering teams reviewing them?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
so
mean,
an example is you have these reports, you have these dashboards readily available to them. Is there a requirement to view it like daily, or is it a weekly review or a monthly review?
gotcha. Oh, no, it's not a requirement for them to view it, but we do have. But as people kind of get onboarded with our tool, there are these kind of almost kind of generic dashboards that anybody can access, and it allows them to get a like a cursory view into their spend. And then a lot of times people are actually looking for something a little or a lot more specific, and so I'll work with teams to help them build out what is the specific view that they're looking for. Like, let me think of an example. Maybe folks are looking at how much are they spending in a certain EC2 instance, and or how much are they spending in S3 on an hourly basis, because they're like starting to make changes and they want to see, they really want to see uh, the impact that they had once they made some changes. And so I'll help guide the folks through that.
Actually, I want to dive into reviewing or viewing a certain EC2 instance. What's the importance of that?
Yeah, sure. So are you saying like using a certain EC2 instance type, or like a particular resource, like almost like down to the resource ID?
Uh, That's actually a good question. We can talk about both. Say the report an example that you were talking about. They want to see why they're using or how much they're using of a certain instance. Say an instance types. What's the importance of visualizing that?
Hmm. Yeah, sure. So I would say that the importance of being able to see like what instance type they're on is then you could see like what is like the mixture of instances that you're using, right? And then coupled with that, then you could say, like, hey, these are the better instances to be using. You could use this instead, or if you downgrade even, this is what the cost impact is going to be. Uh, like, or yeah, going maybe from like a 4XL to a 2XL, right? And so always coupled with being able to see that instance level view is also, what is the potential cost impact of if you were to make changes.
I see the value in that report because you can look at the instance type that you're currently on, and newer generations of the instance type are technically cheaper because they want
Hmm.
you on those so they can roll out the older ones.
Hmm.
But then it also allows you to visualize how many you have for commitments, correct?
Right, right. Yes, definitely. And that's actually a big part of what I'm doing as well. I will look at for instance, our RDS instances on an hourly basis, right? Or on it, sorry, at an hourly level. I don't look at the RDS instances on an hourly basis, but at an hourly level. And yeah, trying to get up to that optimal point of what is, how much should we be covering for our RIs? I mean, I manage the RIs for our all of our company, so we definitely don't want our engineering teams to be too focused on that, right? And so, but for myself, yeah, I'll definitely look at those instances at an hourly level, or yeah, at an hourly level to be able to make sure we're running the right optimal coverage for our commitment-based discounts.
Now, are you responsible for that for your entire company? And how are you managing that, like manually automated?
Yeah, right now it's yeah, yes, I manage it for the entire company, and it's a really good practice. I think pretty much, at least within the FinOps community, pretty understood that it's a standard practice to centralize all of your commitment-based discounts to make sure that if, uh, especially on like maybe like the savings plan side, to make sure that like the instance that gets like the best discount on savings plans is prioritized. Um, and so yeah, I do manage it manually right now. We're exploring some automated methodologies or services, but we right now our workloads are fairly predictable, and so managing it manually is sustainable at this time. Savings plans, savings plans make it easy for sure. Um, and so, yeah, we run a mixture of RIs and savings plans because, like I mentioned, there is a pretty good level of predictability with our instances being used. And so, in that case, having RIs and even standard RIs is actually been proven to be quite advantageous for us. And then we have savings plans for all the workloads that I won't be able to predict, or if teams are shifting their workloads, that I'm not aware of, then um, the savings plans will cover that.
Austin, what are some of the biggest mistakes you might see immature FinOps teams implement or try to achieve?
Sure, yeah. I think mistakes would probably be not getting to know um, or not asking why amongst their their stakeholders, their engineering teams, right? And I'm just speaking, more so from my own personal experience of having, fallen into FinOps and really trying to make like an impact as much as possible, right? Kind of having egg on my face for trying to go into a conversation going like, we notice that you guys are using these old generations. Like, why aren't you using these new generations, right? And yeah, I think really being able to sit down with your stakeholders and understand like how is their, why are they running what they're running, right? And a lot of times people just aren't even aware of what's going on in the latest and greatest offerings that AWS has. And so um, I think the one recommendation or advice tied in with mistakes that I see is really rushing in to make an impact, and and not taking the time to really sit down with your stakeholders and understand what they're going through. And I think tied in with that is making sure, like I said, you have the data democratized to work with people, to sit around the table together and understand, what's your cost at, what's your run rate, how much you are you looking to grow, and how can we work together to really understand the cost savings, cost reduction opportunities.
Sounds like one of the biggest mistakes is going into maybe more of a walk phase and trying to
Yeah.
run before understanding and being informed of your data and starting out small.
hmm hmm Yeah, because it's a collaboration, right? You're working together, and um, you know, jumping into things being prescriptive, right? Uh, is definitely, being prescriptive will fall into the walk or the run phase, right? But yeah, like you said, kind of being a little too eager, right? Especially when it's like a company that is large, right? And cloud spend is kind of crept up, like I mentioned in the past. And now, like, you feel like you have to make an impact, and so you're really kind of swooping in and trying to make waves when it really might fall on deaf ears without that kind of collaborative.
I think that might be one of the challenging things when you're implementing FinOps. You have leadership buy in and you need to make an impact, or you feel you need to make an impact right away and immediately because leadership's looking at you when
hmm
you really need to understand and take the time to familiarize yourself with not only all the various teams, understanding the resources you're utilizing and why you're using them, and then start to work through all the phases of FinOps and the implementation. And at that point, in I want to say a couple of months, because by then you can actually start to implement these things and you'll see that impact. But the dollars are so huge that it's like, man, I got to do something now.
yeah. The potential, the potential to save on money, reduce costs, it's there. It's like, but you gotta be all working together on it. It's not just the FinOps team that's working on it.
Also, we were talking about some of the biggest mistakes or challenges an immature FinOps team or culture is. Well, you've indicated that you're not a mature, you don't feel that you're a mature one. But let's talk about maybe some of the mistakes or challenges that you've come across that can be potential advice for those who are looking to implement or improve their FinOps culture.
It really boils down to the data, for me, from an analyst standpoint, from an analytics standpoint, it really boils down to the data. And so I think my advice, or at least from my perspective of where I would really emphasize things, is get really good data engineers, or really good engineers who will be able to really source data from sorts of different places. So for us, we're primarily using the cost and usage report right now, and we could really augment that data by being able to integrate more sources of data, and kind of uh, letting that really allow teams to get a multi-dimensional kind of perspective on their data. So, just running off the top of my head, things like CloudWatch metrics, getting that integrated, because I think one huge area that we really want to improve upon is our unattached EBS volumes, right? You won't get unattached EBS volumes with the cur itself. Or then when it comes to understanding your forecasting and your budgeting, having a cadence and practice around that, having good uh, data engineers to be able to create tools that you need for that are really, really important.
Every single conversation or podcast I've done, everybody has indicated that having the right data is critical, not only for doing some type of improvement or doing cost optimization or reviewing it, but it also helps you trust throughout the entire team and engineers that the data is correct. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We Yeah, I've run into some data issues even recently where our data pipeline was not completing in a timely fashion, and so um, it just created this weird output for our data. And it kind of averaged out okay from like a monthly standpoint or a daily standpoint, but when it got into the hourly perspective, it was just like this kind of weird fuzziness that we saw. It looked like mold on a on a piece of bread. Our usage, and like maybe this was like on RDS, right? Which for the most part has a pretty consistent usage. So, but when engineers see that, then they think, I don't know what you're talking about. This data doesn't make sense. Now, one moment where I got away with it was because it was recently when I think AWS had some issues with S3 data. Um, uh, and so the cost usage report, this might be a little too much inside baseball, but that happened. And so it was okay to not have good data because it wasn't my fault. But yes, having the integrity of what you're saying can definitely be undermined or compromised when you don't have clean, good data.
All right, Austin, I'm going to switch some things up here and let's ask you some fun questions that have nothing to do with FinOps. What do you
Sure,
say?
sure.
All right, let's have a little fun. Okay, if you did not have to be here right now, and when I say right here, I mean not this podcast, I'm talking work because you want to be here. If you didn't have to be at work right now, where would you be and why?
If I didn't have to be at work, where would I be? Well, if it meant I'm not working at all, I'd probably move out to somewhere quieter, somewhere rural, just live a quieter life with maybe my family and maybe a few dogs, and just have a nice outdoor space to kind of explore day to day.
I agree with you. I actually would love the woods, a nice cabin, but
Hmm.
and very quiet. I don't know if I could completely disconnect, but I would try.
Yeah, I don't know how much I could be in the same boat as this, but if I didn't have to work, I think a slower pace of life would be kind of nice.
Okay, we'll make sure she doesn't watch the ending of this episode. Also, let me ask you the last question. Do you remember the iPod? The little device, some
Oh, of
music go on
course.
it?
Yep, yep, yep.
Okay, just checking. I know I'm a little bit older, so I always have to be like, what is an iPod? You know, it was your iPhone, but it had no internet connection. If you had an iPod, and I'm talking the OG, we can say the Nano or Mini because it's fine. If you had that, what music would be on there?
Um, Goodness. I don't know. I don't really. I'm sorry, this might be a lackluster kind of a response, but I don't really have any particular music that I go through phases. I go through all sorts of different random phases of music, and I don't really even listen to a whole lot of music like when I'm working or things like that. But that's because I just really love podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, and um, it's it's fun to be able to do this one. My first time doing a podcast. But man, if I had
What we can say
music.
is there an audio book that you would like to add on to it, or maybe there's a you couldn't even read off of those like the Kindles. So let's just say audio book or anything, but that's all right. We could just say that this podcast was way back then, and you would listen to this.
Definitely, definitely. It's been great to be able to learn all sorts of different perspectives from other people. And sometimes I'll listen on the way to work and I'll get ideas, and I'll make sure I get an idea pitched to pitch to my team.
All right. Well, as my last question is, who are some of the most influential practitioners in FinOps today?
I mean, I would say that my former manager, he was my my first manager in FinOps has definitely been one of the most, I guess, for me, influential people within FinOps. Having that, I think having that mentality of getting the data where it needs to be able to have a starting point with all of your with all your stakeholders has had a very lasting impression on me, and I think it was a really good working relationship that I had with him to then understand the data and be able to talk data with our stakeholders. His name's Jason Kelly, if you're listening.
Well, Jason, thank you for being Austin's influential practitioner in FinOps. Austin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It was great. Yeah, it was great to talk.
All right, everybody. Austin Cheng, a senior FinOps analyst at a major ERP company. My name's Jon Myer, and this has been another awesome episode and discussion around Faces in FinOps, powered by our good friends at ProsperOps. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe, and also check out the ProsperOps blog. And until next time.